Welcome, everyone, to this very important program, Atrocities of the 20th Century, Commemorating the Holocaust and the Bengali Hindu Genocide. I'm Rebecca Rose, Director of North American Affairs at the Combat Antisemitism Movement, and we are grateful that you have joined us today. Today's program commemorates the 52 years after the Bengali Hindu Genocide and 77 years after the Holocaust. Both of these atrocities affected our respective communities in similar ways, as both communities were targeted for eradication. As the years go on, there remain less survivors, less witnesses to tell the stories of these brutal days of history. Today, the Jewish community and the Hindu community have joined forces to both learn about our respective histories and traumas and to honor the millions of lives lost, and to celebrate those who with great fortitude and resilience have survived and lived well to tell their stories, and to ensure that never again means never again. We are honored to have Mr. Ashok Karmaker and Mr. Sami Steigman with us today to tell their stories and ensure that the lives of those lost will never be forgotten. I now turn to my colleague, Samir, Kalra, Managing Director for Policy and Programs at the Hindu American Foundation, who will be monitoring today's discussion. Thank you, Samir.
Great. Thank you so much, Rebecca, and welcome to everyone for joining us for this very, very special program. It's my esteemed privilege and honor today to be moderating this important discussion with our two wonderful speakers. To begin with, I want to start with giving a brief overview of what exactly happened during the 1971 Bengali Hindu Genocide, and what were the factors and causes that led up to it. The roots of the 1971 Bengali Hindu Genocide date back several decades before it, and line the partition of the Indian subcontinent. On August 15, 1947, India gained independence from colonial British rule and was divided into two separate countries, India and Pakistan. The country of Pakistan then consisted of West Pakistan, which is the modern-day Pakistan, and East Pakistan, which is now Bangladesh. Since 1947, ethnic Bengalis in East Pakistan faced linguistic and cultural repression, economic marginalization, political disenfranchisement, and sought greater provincial autonomy. The West Pakistani military and civilian elite sought to create a cohesive polity unified by Islam and the Urdu language. In the process, they suppressed the Bengali culture and language, which was viewed as closely linked to Hinduism and therefore a threat to their conception of an Islamic nation. The next significant event occurred when more than 300,000 to 500,000 people in East Pakistan died from the Bola cyclone on November 11, 1970. West Pakistan declined to send aid, fomenting the desire for an independent Bangladeshi state. Subsequently, on December 7, 1970, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman of the Awami League, a political party based in East Pakistan, won 167 of 169 seats through a democratic election. The Awami League campaigned to form a separate country of Bangladesh, which would have led to the peaceful separation of East Pakistan and West Pakistan. However, on March 25, 1971, the genocide of Hindus in Bangladesh began with Operation Searchlight, a military action by the West Pakistani military to suppress Bangladeshi independence. In the first night, the Pakistani army targeted Hindu neighborhoods and villages, starting first at Jagannath Hall, a Hindu dormitory in Dhaka University. Between 5,000 and 100,000 people were killed in that very first night. On April 6, 1971, Archer Kent Blood, the American Consul General to Dhaka, Bangladesh, sent a telegram to express dissent of US support for the atrocities committed by Pakistan on the Bengali people. The Blood telegram, as it would become to be known, reported that Hindus undeniably were special focus of animal brutality. On August 1st, 1971, George Harrison and Ravi Shankar held a concert for Bangladesh at Madison Square Garden in New York City to raise awareness and monetary aid for the victims of this genocide. On August 10th, 1971, US Senator Edward Kennedy visits a Bangladesh refugee camp in West Bengal, India. On November 1st of that year, Senator Edward Kennedy gave the following report from his trip, Crisis in South Asia, to the US Senate. He stated in that report, "We talked with dozens of such people on the Boira Bangan Road north of Kolkata on a day when at least 7,000 new refugees had crossed the border. Nearly all were farmers. Most were Hindus from districts south of Dhaka on the fringe of the area affected by the last fall's cyclone. Many of these people were still in visible stages of shock, sitting listlessly by the roadside or wandering aimlessly. They told stories of atrocities, of slaughter, of looting and burning, of harassment and abuse by Pakistani soldiers and their collaborators. By November 1971, approximately 10 million refugees, a majority of whom were Hindu, had fled to India. Indian Prime Minister Indira Gandhi's officials noted that Pakistan hoped to reduce the number of Hindus in Bangladesh by driving out Hindus in their millions. Under the guidance of Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, India entered the conflict on December 3, 1971. This began the Indo-Pakistan War of 1971, a defense of Bangladesh on both its eastern and western fronts. Although the war only lasted 13 days, it was the impetus for the surrender of Pakistan and the liberation of Bangladesh. Pakistan General Niazi signed the Instrument of Accession, bringing an official end to the 13-day Indo-Pakistan War and the 10-month Bangladesh Liberation War. The Bangladesh Liberation War ended on December 16, 1971, after an arduous struggle where 2 to 3 million Bengalis were killed and 200 to 400,000 women were raped, the majority of whom were Hindu. And with that overview, I'd like to now pass it to one of the survivors of that genocide, Mr. Ashok Karmaker, who's going to talk a little bit more about his experiences. Mr. Ashok Karmaker is the chairman of the Board of Governors, Bangladesh Hindu Buddhist Christian Unity Council, USA. Based in New York City, Mr. Karmaker is an attorney with a private practice largely focused on asylum and other immigration issues. Prior to coming to the United States, Mr. Karmaker served as a judge for nearly 5 years as a member of the judiciary of Bangladesh, and later served for 3 years as a council officer of the Honorable Minister for Law, Justice, and Parliamentary Affairs of Bangladesh. Mr. Karmaker holds a master's in human rights from the Institute of Commonwealth Studies, University of London, and an LLM from the Columbia University School of Law, and is a member of the New York and Dhaka Bar. Mr. Karmaker writes on issues relating to law and human rights and regularly appears on Bengali TV as an attorney and human rights activist. Mr. Karmaker, I pass it to you now. You're on mute.
Sorry. Thank you very much for arranging this program. And actually, we have lots of things to interact, to learn from a survivor of the Holocaust, and we need to know more about that and sensitize people that what is going on in this world, even in this century and the last century. So I would like to, I'm a survivor of Bengali Hindu genocide, that is in 1971, and the West Pakistan at that time, they unleashed this war. They really forced this onto the Bengali people in general, and the target was the Bengali Hindus. So I'm a survivor of that. Already you know that about 10 million people who had to flee to India to save their lives, and most of them are Hindus. In one count, it is more than 80% of the population that fled to India. In some studies, it is 90%. So all of them are Hindus, and it is said that about 3 million people got killed, and more than 200,000 girls got raped, and most of them, about 2 million to 2.5 million, are Hindus who were killed, and the girls who were raped are mostly Hindus. And obviously, there are lots of forced conversion went on that time. Many people, they had to convert, they were forced to convert to Islam. And obviously, that was done by Pakistani army in collaboration with the local collaborators at that time, the Islamists, and that's all. So, as I said, like I was a survivor, I was very young, means not even a baby, at least 5-6 years old at that time. And I was in the first grade at that time, and in my hometown, that is very small hometown in Bangladesh, in the southern part of Bangladesh. It stands on the river Sugandha. It's a very beautiful town, a small town with very good environment and every climate-wise, and it is crisscrossed by lots of rivers. And then all of a sudden, everything was going wrong. So we used to wake up in the morning and used to go for kirtan, that is Hindu chantings, and in the whole town. And that was our life. It was very calm and quiet. It is very vibrant. At the same time, all the time there are some programs, religious and also cultural programs. So we used to go there. And beginning in 1971, actually, this has changed. Our house was very close to a shop. Our house was on the main road. So the shop that used to rent out the loudspeakers, it was in front of our home. So I used to hear all these musics, and at the same time, when it started going on, the turmoil, like we could understand that the Pakistan is not only discriminating, and this time we are in the ominous sign was going on that something was going to happen. Obviously, I was not in a position to understand at that time what was going on, but excuse me. But instead of waking up in the morning for kirtan in the local town, we started hearing all the march past going on in front of our house. And later, obviously, I could come to know that those march past was done as a training process for the Mukti Bahini, or the liberation forces of that time. They were trying to, they already could understand that they could got the sense that Pakistan was going to do something and they might crack down on us, on Bengalis. So we started hearing all this loud sound in the morning, the march busting and all this in the loudspeakers, all the war thing and the slogans like going on. So this life has changed. And I do not remember when, but after some time we started seeing lots of people coming in the town. And later, obviously, I could come to know that they were from the hometown of Sheikh Mujib, who led the freedom fight, liberation of Bangladesh. And at that time, and later he became the prime minister and the president of the country. So they attacked all those places, and these people were coming in, and we didn't even know at that time. Actually, I should say that we are going to be like that in a month or so, and then we had to go to village, abandoning our house in the town, and there we faced. And then after we left our house, and it was burned down, like the whole town was set fire by the Pakistani army and their collaborators. And when we went to village, and then we started getting threats from the local Rajakars. We call them Rajakars. They used to call them Rajakars, and that means that who were the collaborators with the Pakistani army, and they tried to forcibly convert us to, but we survived by fleeing that, and they looted our properties. And obviously, I saw myself that in our house, a neighboring girl who was beautiful, she came to us, came to our house in the village to stay with us for safety. And the Pakistani army, they raided our house, and they took that girl by the hair and took her to to a room in the rear. And I heard the sound like screaming of the girl. Obviously, I had no clue what was going on at that time, and later I could understand what it was. So then we fled from Bangladesh, and obviously fleeing not was easy. At every single moment we were panicked that we might be caught, and on our way to India, we have seen lots of people being slaughtered. There everywhere, all these corpses are. The bones, hairs everywhere, and then there was like we had to walk, at least in the muddy. At that time, it was rainy season. So in Bangladesh, rainy season is very, this is very muddy, and it is very difficult. And we had to walk about 35 miles or more than that, and for months with my grandma, who was about at that time 67 or 70 years old. Then we went to India, stayed in a refugee camp the rest of the time, and then we came back to Bangladesh in 1972 with the hope that things will be different, but to our utter dismay and we should say that it was not different, even though we are promised that it will be a secular Bangladesh, and our dream was shattered. And nowadays it is going, what is going on right in Bangladesh, it is another ominous sign that something of that kind can happen anytime. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Karmaker, for that, very emotional recounting of your experience. I think as many people like you suffered so much, but it's wonderful to see what you're doing now and how you're still a voice for Bangladesh and you are still a voice for human rights today. So we can make sure that that incident, that tragedy is not repeated again. With that, I want to pass it back to you, Rebecca, so we can start to discuss a little bit about the Holocaust as well.
Sure. Thanks, Samir. And thank you so much, Ashok. That was just incredibly moving. And it's incredible that it hasn't been that much time, and to see how far you've come is a beautiful thing. So thank you for those words. Now we'll switch gears a bit to discuss the Holocaust. The Holocaust was the systematic state-sponsored persecution and murder of 6 million European Jews by the Nazi German regime and its allies and collaborators. The United States Holocaust Memorial Museum defines that the years between 1933 and 1945 were the Holocaust. The era began in January 1933 when Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party came to power in Germany. It ended in May 1945 when the Allied powers defeated Nazi Germany in World War II. The Holocaust is also sometimes referred to as the Shoah, the Hebrew word for catastrophe. When they came to power in Germany, the Nazis did not immediately start to carry out mass murder. However, they quickly began using the government to target and exclude Jews from German society. Among other anti-Semitic measures, the Nazi German regime enacted discriminatory laws and organized violence targeting Germany's Jews. The Nazi persecution of the Jews became increasingly radical between 1933 and 1945. This radicalization culminated in a plan that the Nazi leaders referred to as the final solution to the Jewish question. The final solution was the organized and systemic mass murder of European Jews. The Nazi German regime implemented this genocide between 1941 and 1945. I'm now honored to introduce Holocaust survivor, Sami Steigman. Sami's life story is remarkable. He was born on December 21st, 1939, in Czernowitz, Bukovina, part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire belonging to Romania. Later, it became part of former Soviet Union, and today it is in Ukraine. From 1941 through 1944, Sami was with his parents in the Ukraine at Mogilev Podolsky, a labor camp in an area called Transnistria. The camp was liberated by the Red Army, and his family was deported by the Romanians, not by the Germans. He grew up in Transylvania in a small town called Regan. He did not know the language. In 1961, the whole family immigrated to Israel, and he served in the Israeli Air Force. 1968, without knowing the language and no money, Sami came to the United States. He lived in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where he married, divorced, and eventually in 1983 returned to Israel. However, in 1988, he returned to the United States, choosing New York City as his final home. Welcome, Sami. We are so honored to have you with us today.
Hello, everybody. I'm very honored to be here. And for me, it's also very important because I did not know anything, to be honest with you, about the Bengali genocide. Okay. I know people from Bangladesh and everything else, but I did not know the history. And it's something that, like everybody else, we have to know. I never use names. I don't attack people, but boy, do I attack what they say. And one leader of our country lumped together genocide and Holocaust and said that Holocaust is happening today in this world. And that is totally, absolutely incorrect. There is a difference between the Holocaust and genocide. Genocide is the murder of a group of people. The Holocaust is the annihilation of a group of people. And one of the things that I do by educating the next generation, because my future and my hope is based on the young people, is to teach them how is it possible that ordinary people from Germany, okay, from Europe, from other countries, have found it not only acceptable, but required to annihilate one group of people, the Jewish people. It's a concept very difficult to understand, and something that is so unique about the Holocaust, besides being the most recorded crime in human history, is also the fact that it was industrialized murder. It was run like a factory. Okay, and very few people know about that. So, as a Holocaust survivor, one of the things that I want to do is to explain that genocide and Holocaust, although different, started the same way with words and bullying. Words lead to action, okay? And with words, you can incite, you can elevate somebody. I teach the young people, you know, not to belittle anybody, because that is not a reflection of that particular person that they belittle. It's a reflection of who they are. And by belittling somebody else, they belittle themselves. So what they have to do is to elevate somebody, okay? And one of the things is very difficult. If I have the time, if you will permit me, I would like to tell how genocide, Holocaust and genocide happened, but obviously about the Holocaust. And interestingly enough, it's very important for people to understand that we have science of today, that if we don't take the appropriate action in time, okay, we are becoming reactive instead of proactive, can lead to other tragedies. So let's start, okay, with Germany. In World War I, when Germany lost the war, okay, and the Treaty of Versailles, there were three punishments that actually took away the national pride of the German people. Number one, they had to return all the occupied land. Number two, they had to demilitarize. They could not have an army. And number three, they had to pay reparations to the countries that they fought against. People do not understand what inflation is. This country is in debt of $31.5 trillion. Nobody knows what $1 trillion is. But to give an example of what happened in Germany when they had to print money. In 1917, $1 American was worth 4 German money. In 1923, at the height of the inflation, $1 American was 1 trillion German money. You could have a wheelbarrow full of paper money. You could not buy even a newspaper. Nobody wanted it. They used it to warm themselves up in the winter. So obviously, Hitler, when he started, his party had only 6 members. Oh, they're too small. We don't react. You know, forget it. Okay. When they came, okay, the elections in 1932, he got 30% of the German vote. They were exceptionally good, I would say even geniuses in propaganda. And I'm going to show different steps that by not acting appropriately and in time, it kept escalating until it finally reached the point of no return. When the Nazis came to power, their initial goal was not to murder the Jews. Their initial goal was to have a Germany free of Jewish people, Juden frei. But the Jewish people were assimilated. They fought proudly for Germany in World War I. They lived there for centuries. It was the most enlightened country in the world. Why would they want to leave? Okay, so what happened is to make them leave, okay, in addition of boycotting their stores and, you know, isolating them and with propaganda, portraying them as caricatures and everything else, they decided in 1935 to come out with the Nuremberg laws. And in the Nuremberg laws, okay, they took away their citizenship. Doctors could not practice medicine. Teachers could not teach. Children could not go to school, could not participate in sports. Okay, and guess what? the Germans are law-abiding citizens. I've been in Germany 3 times, and even today, they're law-abiding citizens. To give an example, in the United States, I don't know other countries, but when you say 65 miles an hour, okay, that's the benchmark. In Germany, it is the law. It is the maximum. So in the Nuremberg laws in 35, they told the German people, do not associate yourself with your Jewish neighbors or with your Jewish friends. And because it was the law, the Germans felt patriotic to do that. Okay, but interestingly enough, they were not violent. The violence started on the next step in 1938, after they annexed Austria, in November 9 and November 10. And that is known today as the Kristallnacht, the night of the broken glass. Over 100 Jews were murdered. Over 7,500 stores and synagogues were destroyed. And to add insult to injury, the Jews had to pay, okay, to clean up the streets and everything else. And at the same time, they put in prison 30,000. Okay, and this was the first time that it became violent. Now comes the next stage, and the people knew what's happening, but they did not react. They became passive, and they said, well, it doesn't affect me. Okay, I have to state that there were only 3 countries that officially accepted Jewish refugees. And that's why I don't want anybody to make comparisons what happened today to the past. And that was Dominican Republic, China, and Philippines. Okay, interestingly enough, there was also one country, a Muslim country, that had more, okay, Jews during the Nazi regime than before. And that was Albania. In Albania, they had only 200 people. During, okay, the Nazi regime, they had 2,360 Jews, which is also very interesting because people have a tendency, you know, to lump together and to put everybody in one pot. So what happened is they still did not think of murdering the Jews en masse. But with the Nuremberg laws, a lot of the Jews left Germany. And where did they go? They went to Europe. And comes the next stage, September 1st, 1939, when the Wehrmacht in Germany attacked Poland. But unlike Europe, which was occupied, Poland was annexed, and that became part of the Greater Germany. And in Poland, they found 3.3 million Jews. What the hell do you do with them? So now comes the idea, you know, of exterminating them. United States knew about the things, a lot of other countries, again, they did not react, and they said, okay, we have other things to deal with. Interestingly enough, comes the next stage. And the next stage is June 22nd, 1941. On that day, the Wehrmacht attacked former Soviet Union. Obviously, they attacked it from the west in the area, okay, that is today Ukraine. And in Ukraine, they murdered 1.5 million Jews. That period of time in Ukraine is known as murder by bullets. We did not have yet, okay, the death camps. Interestingly enough, behind the Wehrmacht, there were special killing groups called Einsatzgruppen, and behind them were the Romanian troops. And that's why we're deported by the Romanians and not by the Germans. And Transnistria and the labor camp, okay, was annexed and became part of Romania. And the other thing is, and I will explain to you also the importance of it, is January 20, 1942. In a city which today is part of Berlin, 15 high-ranking Nazi criminals got together and decided the final solution to the Jewish question. Now remember, when I'm using the word final, so it means that they had many, many steps to lead the final one. Okay, and they decided, okay, to start with Europe. They came out with a list of all of the European countries, 11 million Jews, okay, and their goal was, once they were going to murder all of the European Jews, they were going to open up a museum. And they were going to call it the Museum of the Extinct Jewish Race. This is the day, January 20, that from my perspective is the beginning of the Holocaust. In 1942, they also started to build, okay, the death camps. Now, interestingly enough, the month of January is very important. As you probably know, and I'm talking about the audience, okay, Israel is vilified to the UN. Okay, unreasonably and disproportionately with any other country. However, Israel was able, okay, to pass 2 resolutions in the General Assembly at the UN. The first one, if you don't know, is November 1st, 2005, which is known today as the International Holocaust Remembrance Day. Last year, on January 20, they passed the second resolution. And I was very honored. I was invited to be at that historic moment. And that was combating, okay, the Holocaust deniers. And just like the first one that took years to be known internationally, worldwide, this will also take some time to become this. The other thing is we also have another date that we commemorate as the International Holocaust Remembrance Day, which was January 27, when the Soviets liberated Auschwitz-Birkenau. But interestingly enough, okay, we also have Yom HaShoah. And Yom HaShoah is the national, the Israeli, okay, the Jewish remembrance, but it's called Yom HaShoah V'Hagvura, heroism, because it actually celebrates the first Hebrew day. In Hebrew, we have 13 months, so therefore that's not called on the same exact Gregorian date. It changes every year. And that is the first Hebrew day of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. And what happened is, in the ghetto, okay, with smuggled guns, okay, a few grenades, Molotov cocktails, and everything else, they were able, okay, to resist the mighty German military for 43 days. Finally, the ghetto was completely liquidated. Okay, so we have to remember this one. Also, as a Holocaust survivor, child of Holocaust survivors, subjected to medical experiments, saved by a German woman, okay, certainly Israeli Air Force, it's important for me to explain from my perspective what is a Holocaust survivor. A Holocaust survivor was somebody that was in one of the 3 types of camps. Number 1, the concentration camp. In the concentration camp, when they brought the people, the commander, many times the doctor whose job is to save lives, would be in the middle, never say the word, pointed right, left. One group would be murdered right away. The second one would become slaves. The second group, where my parents and I were, labor camp, people were not murdered right away. They died through attrition. They were worked to death. If somebody did not follow instructions properly, they would use that particular person as an example, okay, for others, and they would beat that person. And it wasn't just one person, many, many people. They beat them to death. They starved them to death. People died from disease. And many times, randomly, the commander or other high-ranking Nazi officer would use the people as a shooting target. But I want you to understand, life in the labor camps was not easy. They died through attrition. And to give an example, okay, I'm quite sure that a lot of you have seen those pictures. Okay, if a person like weighing 180, 200 pounds, if they were lucky and they survived, okay, they would weigh 75, 80 pounds. So you can understand that. The only thing that I would say is that people had faith. Okay, a number of them survived. People that had no faith whatsoever, a lot of them, because the conditions were so dire, they committed suicide. But I also want to explain, most of the people, when they talk about resistance, they talk only about armed resistance, but there was humanitarian resistance, there was spiritual resistance, there was religious resistance. They had, okay, in the camps, they had theater, they had music, okay, they also had many, many things to do, okay, to make the life as much as possible more normal. And I'm just going to give you one comment of a former friend of mine. He passed away at the age of 100. He was in over 10 camps. And I asked him one time, what were you thinking when you were in those camps? And he said there was only one thing: survival. And he mentioned something to me that I will never forget. To understand the conditions that people had to go through, he said, we were treated like animals. We became animals. So the other interesting thing is, and with that one I will stop and we'll give you the opportunity to ask questions from both of us. But in 2013, I was completely shocked. There were two articles, one in Daily Mail in London and one in New York Times. The Nazis and their collaborators had 500 different type of camps. Okay, right now the books are open. We don't have enough people to do the research, but additionally they have discovered lately additional camps, and right now the number has risen for over 44,000. Of all of these over 44,000 different type of camps, only 6 were death camps. The function of the death camps was to work around the clock, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Auschwitz-Birkenau, Treblinka, Belzec, Sobibor, Chelmno, and Majdanek. And in 1991, 46 years after the war, finally, another group of people were recognized as Holocaust survivors. They are called the hidden children. Those are the people that were hidden and saved by strangers. And at the same time, okay, they lived in the sewer, in the forest, did whatever they could, okay, by all means, okay, to survive. My life was also saved by a German woman. I do not know her name, so obviously I was not able to honor her. But in 2014, I was in Jerusalem, in Israel, in Jerusalem, at Yad Vashem to give testimony. And next to the museum, there is a garden honoring 27,000 non-Jews that save Jews. They are called the righteous among the nations. And there I saw a marker honoring the unknown righteous among the nations. And that made me very happy, because the person that saved my life was indirectly honored. So I'm not going into details, you know, the medical experiments that they did on me. I suffered all my life. I will suffer for the rest of my life. But that is the past. Right now, what our job is to do, hashtags, my job, whatever you do, Rebecca, Samir, what we all do, it's up to us to educate the next generation. All the changes in the world have been accomplished by young people. And Rebecca, something for you, okay, because you are with CAM. I do not like the word anti-Semitism. Okay, and the reason is because there are 3 groups that are Semites: Jews, Arabs, and Ethiopians. So an Arab can say the most vile things against Jews, against Israel, and legitimately claim, I am not an anti-Semite. So therefore, we have to use the word, and that's what I teach the young people, because like Joseph Goebbels said, a lie told long enough becomes truth, and we have to start using the word Jew hatred.
We do use that as well, but I will say this was incredible, Sami. I know that in a short span of time, there's hours and hours and hours to go over. You can only scratch the surface, but you did an amazing job doing that. It's such an honor to have you with us, especially today when there are not that many survivors left with us to tell their stories, and to hear you so eloquently tell yours and tell the story of what happened is so important. So thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. It's been an honor to have you here, and I would love for Samir now to open a couple of questions.
Yeah. Well, Sami, wow. I've obviously learned about the Holocaust before, but to hear it from your own words was quite an experience. So thank you very much for that very powerful testimony there. I wanted to start with you, Sami, in terms of everything you've gone through, yet you have such a wonderful, positive outlook on life. And how have you kind of been able to maintain that perspective and move past the trauma, and at least in a way that you have been able to do so many great things through your education work, through your speaking? Can you just tell us a little bit about how you've been able to maintain perspective over all these years and maintain such a positive attitude?
Thank you for the question. Number one, because I was only a year and a half, obviously, I have no memories of that period of time. Until the Eichmann trial in Israel in 1961, okay, the Holocaust survivors did not talk, okay? Only after the trial, okay, did they start to open up to talk about it. Before that, most of the Holocaust survivors felt guilty, ashamed, and like victims. And they wanted the children to have a normal childhood. So obviously they did not talk to the children. And I cannot tell you how, possibly from my parents, from the neighborhood where I grew up and everything else. I always look at the bright side. I never, whatever was bad, I put it aside. I was able to compartmentalize it. So I said it was the past. I cannot do anything about it. Let's move forward. I always move forward. But because I have no memories of that period of time, I also do not elicit empathy when I speak to the young people. Because for me, it's not as raw, as fresh as it is for the older generation. From my father's side, from 42 people, only 2 survived. My uncle was not a survivor. He was never in a camp. He was a refugee in Shanghai. And I met him very briefly in 1961, okay, when he lived in Santa Barbara, okay. So the fact that I had that positive mental outlook, I have been able to survive all of the challenges that I faced. Unlike the number of people are running away from challenges, I actually embrace them, because I realized by overcoming the challenges, I am becoming a better person, a kinder person, okay? And so what happened is that my positive outlook in life has sustained me even during the COVID. When I live here in Manhattan, I live alone. I live under the poverty line. 1/3 of the Holocaust survivors in the United States live under the poverty line. In New York, okay, live 30,000 survivors. 40%, 12,000 of them live under the poverty line, which is unconscionable, okay? And at the same time, I have a son, I have 2 grandchildren. I cannot be in touch with them, but I've been able to compartmentalize. I don't elicit from the young people to feel sorry for me, because I made a life for myself. And my motto in life is, I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to be. And within my means, I choose to be a happy person. So that particular attitude is, there was somebody else that coined it, but I used it indirectly without reading her book. I don't know if you heard of Dr. Edith Eger. She wrote a book called The Choice, and she said that we are prisoners of our own mind. And interestingly enough, without reading her book, I met her. Okay, she signed her book, autographed it. But okay, I used to compare the brain with the computer. They used the saying GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. So what you put in your head, positive thoughts, will lead to positive words, to positive attitude, positive experiences, a happier life. So we have to learn to escape our own prison, what you put in. So that is something very important. That's what I try to instill in the young people. So answering your question is the fact that I do not remember what happened during those days. And the fact that I had always, cannot tell you how, where, why. Even my mother asked me, where did you take that positive outlook? And I said, that's me. I don't, how can I explain it? And that's it.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, one thing I can do say that you don't mind, obviously. Okay. But I volunteered for 18 different organizations. When I became homeless, I would try to commit suicide. Hopefully, I mean, gladly I didn't succeed. But interestingly enough, I used to volunteer for Make-A-Wish Foundation. I had a child, okay, that had leukemia, and I met him. I showed him around the city, and 2 years later, his initial goal was to meet the firefighters, the heroes from 9/11. And 2 years later, he came back. He wanted to see me, and he gave me a button. And sometimes somebody says a word, a sentence, an object will change your perspective on life. And he brought me a simple button, okay, with his picture, okay, and the top and the bottom was the date, November 20, okay, that he was, okay, completely cured. In the top, it said survivor. And at age 63, for the first time in my life, I was able to understand why, okay, I had always the positive outlook in life. I have never felt, with everything that I went through, like a victim. I was always a survivor. And as a survivor, you can achieve everything that you want. As a victim, you can blame anybody you want, okay, or circumstances. And this is, I'm looking at Ashok, I'm looking at all of you, okay? All of us are survivors of different things, okay, that we faced in life. And that's what I teach the young people. When you face a challenge, face it. Don't run away from it. You will be a stronger, better person.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that, Sami. That was very inspirational. Ashok, similar question for you. You obviously escaped from Bangladesh. Then after independence and the hope of a new secular country, you went back with your family, tried to build a life there. You worked there for several years. So you saw the country also changing for the worse. Can you talk a little bit about how, that has shaped your experiences and how you've been able to, from all of that, become a lawyer, be a judge, work on human rights issues? I mean, it's pretty amazing what you've been able to do. Can you just talk about how you have maintained that perspective and kind of kept such a positive attitude and continue to fight for the rights of people that are still facing persecution?
Thank you. But I should thank Sami for educating me, enlightening me. You put the words, I think, for me too, that we are survivors and to escape our own prison. That is the best quote for me. Just we have to escape our own prison. And for me, I do not think any kind of hatred against any population will work. What we have to do that we have to understand what happened and how we can stop it in the future. So I always try to be a positive. As Sami said, like victimhood does not really put you in a position to change the world, to start a new beginning. Victims are victims, obviously the people, the perpetrators, they are to blame, obviously, for making others victim. But victimhood, that I am always victim, feeling that way, is a negative. Negativity does not bring anything to your life. That is my understanding. So obviously these horrible things that go on in our life make us more humble and to understand it better. To me, not a single thing in the world has only pros or only cons. They have both pros and cons in life. We can see the two sides of the same thing. So in 1971, I was very, young, but I'm not an infant, but I could understand, and I remember many of the things that happened. So obviously that I saw that people that who were, setting fire our house, or memories, sweet memories, everything went away. The people that who came to loot our family house, who tried to convert us forcefully. I know these people, and at the same time, some people who came forward to save us. They are of different religions, Muslims, Christians. So, I cannot hate people only for being with their different religions belief. But at the same time, I don't want to forget what happened to us as population. That's supposed not to happen to anybody. I do not believe in revenge. I do not believe in retribution. But at the same time, we need recognition that what happened to us in 1971, the Hindus being targeted for being Hindus. And there are many Muslims, they got killed too in Bangladesh, but they were not killed for being Muslims. They were killed for being Bengali who supported freedom fighting, who were supporters of Awami League, who were leaders of Awami League, and obviously they are political in nature. Genocide, the definition of genocide does not include the political persecution. I do not support that, but still the definition. So anyway, what my point was and is still that we have to fight for the recognition that what happened in 1971 to Hindus, and ultimately coming back to the country that where I left. That means we left Pakistan and came back to Bangladesh. That was good feelings at that time, obviously. And we had the great hope, high hope, that it will be a secular country, meaning that Pakistan, they wanted to make it an Islamic country so that, obviously it doesn't make any difference for people, in the general people, whether it is an Islamic country, it is an Islamic country, or a Hindu country, or a Christian country, because people have to work and, in any way, but that is being done only to divide the nation on the religious lines, and thereby some people, some Qatari, some syndicate, they get benefited by that. Anyway, our hopes were dashed by all the happenings after that after 1971, 1975. The people, the defeated force, that people that who supported Pakistan, who inflicted all the miseries and atrocities on Bengali population and particularly Hindus, they came to power, and it's very unfortunate, and they try to turn the tide of the history to a backward, and they were successful. And very unfortunate that the party that who led Bangladesh for liberation and promised that it will be a secular country, they broke their promise. They are now supporting directly or implicitly everything that these Islamists wanted to do, and Hindus are being persecuted now, and this government is doing nothing, and most of the time they are the ones that who are instigating it against Hindus. So this is still, as Sami said, we cannot live with victimhood feelings. So my point is, I'm trying to the new generation to make them understand what actually happened, to put the things straight, not that in any political lines. I'm a human rights activist. I have no political affiliation whatsoever. And I believe that what happened to Hindus in Bangladesh in 1971, obviously it was politically motivated, but it is human rights tragedy. And that has to be defined and described and passed on to our new generation, that it was a human rights violation, human rights issue that should be viewed in that way without mixing politics in it. And that is my goal, and I'm doing that. And I hope that this positivity will help us in the future to get it recognized that it was a Bengali Hindu genocide in 1971. Thank you.
May I say something? May I say something?
Please.
Yes.
Please.
Okay. Since we are talking about being a victim, I have a quote that I say quite often. To be victimized is universal. Victimhood is optional. So nobody can make you a victim. You are the only one that can make yourself a victim. So that's what we have to learn from it, okay, and to move forward. And one of the things that I would like, I teach the young people, especially the Jewish kids, okay? We are not united. We have somebody that is basically complicit in what's happening today in this country. This is the media and social media. And Jewish people are helping everybody. But I would like to see for the first time, to see the Jewish people, okay, to fight for themselves, not only for other people. And I would like to see the young people to be united, march, take example from Martin Luther King, okay, Gandhi, okay, another example, and to demonstrate, bring the media with us, bring other people, the other minorities that we have helped, okay, and with the media, okay, to eradicate, well, you cannot eradicate, but at least to minimize, okay, the hatred and the Jew hatred that exists today. It just in this century, there's no room for it.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Unfortunately, we don't have more time to have this discussion, but I think it is something amazing that in this short span of an hour, I've already learned so much. But I still have so many more questions. So I think I'll have to, in sometime in the future, bring you back on and have another program where we can have a much longer discussion, because there's so much more to learn, so much more to do. But thank you both for those wonderful words. And I want to pass it back to Rebecca to help us close our program.
1 second, Samir, you just said something that I always tell the teachers and other people if something does not go the way we really want it. In every calamity, there is an opportunity. And you took the words out from my mouth, okay, to bring us back.
Yes.
And I would love to be with our show. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Sami, it was really nice listening to my most favorite teacher, Professor Grad in Colombia. He was a survivor, a Holocaust survivor, and I used to be a very good relationship with him. And he actually, I learned a lot from him too. So
and maybe we can get together, because I have never spoke to the Bangladesh people. So I don't know how much they know about the Holocaust. Obviously, they know about your tragedy, but maybe you can work together.
Yes,
and this
absolutely.
is up to Rebecca. This is up to Rebecca.
Yes,
and I live in New York too.
Samir.
I want to take a moment to thank Ashok and Sami for your incredible insights, for sharing these crucially important stories with our viewers. We hope that you at home have learned something today, and that you take these stories with you and help us to remember these terrible days of history, and to honor those who are not here to use their voices. To learn more about the Bengali Hindu genocide, visit hinduamerican.org, and to learn more about the Holocaust and Sami Steigman's story, you can visit his page at www.samispeaks.com and combatantisemitism.org. Thank you so much for joining us. Goodbye.